right, good morning, everybody.
Morning.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, it's not spitting snow still, so that's good. Alrighty, today we are in the last lesson of the quarter, and you should have the new quarters books, which conveniently got delivered yesterday, and postman thoughtfully put them right on the edge of a porch where they would get a little damp, but I think they're all good. We're all good. It's fine. Everything's fine. Okay, so we're running toward holiness in Hebrews chapter 12, verses 1 through 17 today, and we're somewhere between AD 60 and 69. Today's lesson uses the metaphor of running a long-distance race, like a marathon, and likens it to our own pursuit of holiness as Christians. We got to remember it's not a sprint.
Right.
Gotta have patience, gotta have endurance, gotta have perseverance, and lock on your target. It is not a sprint. But such a long distance race requires a runner to make intense sacrifice to complete the race. It's not for the faint of heart. Hebrews instructs us that the sacrifice in our Christian race, so to speak, toward holiness, should involve resisting sin to the point of shedding blood. The writer of Hebrews points to Jesus as a consummate example for this proposition, because Jesus literally bled and died on the cross to finish his race to holiness. Amen. And to assume his rightful place at the throne. Further, Jesus viewed his own death as a joyful occurrence in a way because of what it actually accomplished. And just as a marathon runner pushes through the pain and the sacrifice of the race, and that persistence gives way to the exhilaration of finishing the race, so it is with living a life in the pursuit of holiness. I'm going to start with laying aside hindrances in verses 1 through 2. Wherefore, seeing we are also compassed about with so great a cloud of witnesses, let us lay aside every weight and the sin which doth so easily beset us, and let us run with patience the race that is set before us, looking unto Jesus, the author and finisher of our faith, who for the joy that was set before him endured the cross, despising the shame, and is set down at the right hand of the throne of God. Welcome back to high school Shakespeare.
We just talked about that scripture last week. Remember? I love that verse.
Oh, okay. So we've got a great cloud of witnesses mentioned in verse 1. And that actually picks up from where chapter 11 of Hebrews left off, because chapter 11 talked about Israel's heroes who lived and persevered in faith. Jewish Christian converts are urged by the writer to follow their example by using that long-distance race metaphor. Good long-distance runners have to be deliberate and intentional about discarding any unnecessary weight and avoiding anything in their path that might cause them to stumble or have uneven footing, which gave me flashbacks to tripping at the Veterans Day Parade. Apparently I'm not a good long-distance runner because I was not looking where I was trying to truck along.
That's pretty funny.
I was sitting there, maybe there was a lesson in that.
Yeah, the distractions of this world got to you?
No, I think that was God telling me I shouldn't have gotten so mad and I needed to slow my roll. Because that's what happened. I got mad and I wasn't looking where I was going. I was trying to go faster than I should have on an uneven sidewalk that I knew was uneven. So that was my stupidity. But for believers, sin is what weighs us down and trips us up in our race toward holiness. So we have to inventory these sinful hindrances to our pursuit of holiness and wage war against the sins and anything else that we carry that distracts us spiritually, so we can more effectively run our own long-distance race with a life of holiness as the finish line, and hopefully not faceplant in the meantime. We're called to fix our eyes on Jesus as standing at that finish line. the author of Hebrews sets Jesus as the author of our faith, as a trailblazer or a pioneer who leads our way and sets the example for others to follow. Kind of like a wilderness guide, so to speak. I think that might even be an even better analogy. And Jesus is also designated as the finisher of our faith, the one who brings our faith to maturity. Because we get saved, but it's a process. Getting saved is just the beginning of it. Each step of our daily walk in faith brings us that much closer to our journey's end in terms of spirituality. When we fix our eyes on Jesus, we can follow him, so our faith is brought to maturity. Then we go in the next couple verses to seeing Jesus' endurance. For consider him that endured such contradiction of sinners against himself, lest ye be wearied and faint in your minds. Ye have not yet resisted unto blood, striving against sin. So here's the way I looked at it is the writer's kind of given a little bit of a halftime locker room talk. Yeah, the kind that the team gets when they're behind. Jesus is held up as the model for endurance and suffering to inspire strength, motivation, and perspective. The apostle who wrote these verses knew his Jewish Christian convert audience, because that's who the book of Hebrews is written for. They were being persecuted by their community leaders and their own families, like the vile sinners who had crucified Jesus. The writer was concerned that his readers were getting weary at the risk, and they were getting at risk of giving in and giving up before finishing their spiritual race towards holiness, as they were harassed by, again, the Jewish non-converts, which included their family members. In a way, it was kind of like a cold civil war that we had on our shores. You had family members pitted against family members. So the author of Hebrews, his message to the Jewish converts was essentially buckle up, buttercup, and put on your big girl or your big boy pants and get back in there and finish this race. Yeah, the author said, I know you're going through hard times, but you got to put your suffering into perspective. None of you have been martyred, at least not yet, or spilled actual blood for Jesus as he did for us. You got to put it in perspective. As for us, we can certainly struggle, and that struggle is also real. We can face concentrated persecution for our faith, but we can also be greatly discouraged by serious long-term difficulties like unemployment, illness, family dysfunction and conflict, litigation, or even the effects of that lovely government bureaucracy and red tape. But as Christians, we should rally around one another in those troubling times and in prayer and personal support. But our first remedy, before even that, should, as the writer of Hebrews says, we should be first putting our troubles into perspective. And we should look to Jesus as our first remedy. And then we move to accepting fatherly discipline. In verse 5, the writer pivots to another shortcoming of his Jewish Christian converts, the failure to view hardships as acts of loving discipline. And ye have forgotten the exhortation which speaketh unto you as unto children. My son, despise not thou the chastening of the Lord, nor faint when thou art rebuked of him. For whom the Lord loveth he chasteneth, and scourgeth every son whom he receiveth. If ye endure chastening, God dealeth with you as with sons. For what son is he whom the Father chasteneth not? But if ye be without chastisement, whereof all are partakers, then ye are bastards and not sons. Furthermore, we have had fathers of our flesh, which corrected us, and we gave them reverence. Shall we not much rather be in subjection unto the Father of spirits and live? For they verily, Michelle, with the running marquee lights, the verily? For they verily for a few days chastened us after their own pleasure, that he for our profit, that we might be partakers of his holiness. Now, no chastening for the present seemeth to be joyous, but grievous. Nevertheless, afterward it yieldeth the peaceable fruit of righteousness unto them which are exercised thereby. That was a lot of words, huh? As Heidi would say, that was a lot of words. Okay, so what's all that mean? The Jewish Christian converts are being reminded by the writer of Hebrews that God's discipline of them is actually a sign of their identity as God's children. And the writer here is mindful of his own culture back in the first century, where the lack of parental discipline signaled that a child was illegitimate. Now, being an illegitimate child, at some point I'll learn the English language, being an illegitimate child these days is no big deal. Back then, it was a huge deal. Very stigmatic, doesn't even touch it. Back in that day, again, a lack of parental discipline signaled that a child was illegitimate. And Greco-Roman men in that day in that society who did not view a child as his own legitimate child wasn't going to be bothered by the task of loving or disciplining that child. And certainly I can tell you, as a lot of people can, to the modern world, where you have a parent who truly loves a child, that parent's going to invest the time and the effort to properly discipline the child. That's not the easy way out. Properly and lovingly disciplining a child, that's the harder path, by a long shot. Because it's the parents and the adults who abuse or neglect the kids who mete out either improper discipline directed by anger, or, as I often see on the flip side, they don't care enough and they will not take the time or the effort to discipline a child, and instead they take the path of least resistance because they just can't be bothered. Disciplining a child takes work. It takes wisdom, it takes reflection, and it takes perseverance.
And it takes love.
Yeah, and it takes love. Well, that's why you do it, is because you truly love the child. The parent puts the child's needs before the parent's needs and wants, and they stick with it. And that's not the case with God with us. Just as an earthly father disciplines his child properly and out of love, so God disciplines believers out of love to bring about the spiritual maturity that they need and help them develop that holiness. So the persecution God was allowing these Jewish Christian converts at the time to suffer was for the proper purpose of purifying their faltering faith. He wasn't being careless, he wasn't being negligent, he wasn't just simply not paying attention and not realizing that they were going under persecution. He wasn't allowing them to be persecuted because he just didn't care just for the heck of it, or it entertained him, or he was mad at them. It was for a very important purpose that he was allowing them to be disciplined. He was just using the persecutors as his tools. Now, earthly parents, of course, aren't perfect because we're human, And earthly parents make even well-intentioned mistakes based on their best but limited understanding, maybe a faulty upbringing of their own. And they may not always discipline children the right way. That's definitely true. But God is the perfect Father who fully understands our needs and our situation and our weaknesses. And then God supplies what we need to share fully in His holiness. And at times, that supply includes necessary discipline.
Often think about when you see some of these posts on like Facebook or something. Here's this person. Oh, things are great. I'm blessed by God. I got trips to Europe. I got, I'm going here. I'm going there.
The
Finances are good.
The God is good bragging speech.
Yeah. Granted, I realize this is the public view, and what's happening at home might be different, but it often makes you wonder, is there any God at all in their lives? Or are they just a Sunday school going Christian, and they don't have a physical relationship? Because where is the struggles, the trials, the overcoming, that's what you and I need to see on Facebook, is how people are overcoming these obstacles. Not that everything's going good, because that gives me the wrong message. That tells me that there is no God in their lives.
Yeah.
They're right. They're not being corrected. They're not being purified as gold is purified. They're not being tested as silver is tested.
Yeah.
Because everything's going good for them. And
they're not being tested or honed.
Yes.
Sometimes I think what you'll find, though, more often, is that they just don't share it.
Well, sometimes,
Because,
right. But they're supposed to.
Yeah, you want everyone to think that you live this, like, perfect life and that you can handle everything and you have faith that is rock solid, and hopefully we do. But there are times whenever everyone, you shake a little bit and God has to steady us.
But that's what we need to share.
It is. And ironically, like, I had taught a class recently, probably about a week and a half ago. I was asked to go and teach a women's Bible study, and we started sharing, and I started talking. I actually opened up and I shared about whenever my daughter was going through an alcohol problem, and that completely changed the entire atmosphere, because then all of a sudden everybody else felt a freedom to be able to share what they were actually going through. And then we were able to, like, pray, and we were able to really seek God on that stuff, because otherwise, like, I think one of the biggest things that the devil has besides pride is shame. He deals with shame a lot. He makes you feel like there must be something wrong with you. There must be something wrong with your family. But you know what? Most times than not, it's because we have an enemy out there that wants to steal, kill, and destroy our family. And if he can't get to us, he'll get to our kids. But we have to learn. We have to help each other be able to stand up and to break these bondages and just speak against these things and declare the word of God over our situations. And if we don't do that with each other, if we don't trust each other enough that we can open up to each other, we're going to stay in bondage. We're going to stay isolated, and that's exactly where the devil wants us.
I think the devil pressures us to make us feel, like you said, not only less than.
Yes.
But also he makes us feel like we can't admit that things aren't going great or things aren't going perfect, because if we admit privately, if not publicly, that things aren't going great or perfect, we can't, it hinders that spiritual progress.
Right.
And that's ultimately his goal, is that we don't mature spiritually.
He wants us to get caught in those besetting sins, that pride, the shame, all that we talked about last week. Because those are the easy ones to get caught up in, and then we don't progress.
Yeah.
We're tripped up.
The Sunday school materials were using a different comparison, but I compared it to a recruit's experience in boot camp with discipline, because that's a lot of what boot camp teaches. Discipline encompasses the training, the instruction, and the correction. And like boot camp, those things are well intentioned. I'm not going to say that they're pleasant, but they're to develop the recruit. In that case, a military recruit, a troop. Here, it's a spiritual recruit. And it, that discipline does not come from malice or anger. It may feel like it, and it's not going to be pleasant, but it's coming from love and caring, because God's discipline is intended to shape believers more into Christ's image. And we should not reject or resent what is actually God's gracious act of disciplining us. It's actually evidence of the privileged familial status that believers enjoy with God as his children. Again, discipline's not pleasant when we are experiencing it, nor is it really supposed to be. But afterwards, on the backside, kind of as matured teenagers, on the backside we can reflect with the writer, and we can understand that those difficult times when God disciplined us were actually times when he was working in our hearts to produce a great harvest of righteousness and spiritual peace. Then the call to endure. Wherefore lift up the hands which hang down, and the feeble knees, and make straight paths for your feet, lest that which is lame be turned out of the way, let it rather be healed. So the writer here closes his argument again in a typical fashion that you see in the book of Hebrews. It says, just do it and persevere. Get up, stand strong, and get on with the glorious race toward holiness. Wasn't exactly helicopter parenting, was it? Or gentle parenting. But I don't know that gentle parenting is proving to be effective at all. I think it's actually harmful. So then we go to peace, pursuing peace and holiness, because believers are to pursue peace, unity, and holiness, and focus on cultivating healthy relationships and striving for personal sanctification. So what are the virtues are we to pursue? Follow peace with all men and holiness, without which no man shall see the Lord. Looking diligently lest any man fail of the grace of God, lest any root of bitterness springing up trouble you, and therefore many be defiled. So especially in light of the distress from the unbelieving Jewish community, which were the majority, against the minority being the Jewish Christian convert audience, the writer's prodding those Christian converts to make peace with one another, because the writer knew that internal stresses within a church only make the external pressures on the church even worse and more dangerous. Therefore, it's important for us to avoid internal division within the church and stand in solidarity with other believers, especially in times of persecution. And I was reading this and going, yeah, that's true. We can't let our own little internal squabbles and maybe even legitimate disagreements that we have within the church divide us, because if we're divided and we have to stand against opposition from the external outside the church, we're going to be more vulnerable because of this stupid infighting. Now, if you look at probably my best example today, regardless of what your political persuasion is, I see the Republican Party, and they all kind of have this overall goal, but dear Lord, they have so much infighting. They can't pick a general direction and agree We're going to have some minor disagreements. We may even have some significant disagreements, but we're going to stick together and move in this one direction. Because that's one thing the modern Democratic Party historically has been really good at. Yeah, at least as to an outward observer. They stick together whether they have disagreements within the party or not. And that's kind of what we're told we need to do as a church is, even if we have disagreements as to the external forces that are pressuring the church, we got to stick together and present a united front. And the author is also pleading with his readers to pursue holiness. Dropping hands and shaking knees in Christian life are often a signal that there's a concern, a flag, that there's a flagging concern for holiness. That's a little shaky. But Christian holiness is not optional, because without it, we're not going to see God. We're not going to see Jesus again. Holiness is what sets us apart from the sinners who persecuted Jesus. And we really should not be so foolish as to believe in our earthly world that honors what's vile to God, that our holy God is not going to have anything to say about how we live here on earth. When the time for our accounting is upon us, Jesus isn't going to say, don't worry about it. No big deal. How you lived on earth. Living in peace and holiness is essential for maintaining a robust relationship with God and fellow believers. And the author pleaded with his distressed Jewish Christian converts to live up to the grace that had been given to them in their chaotic times. And he warned them against buried bitterness that might burst forth to disturb the well-being of the church and the individual believers. And he warned them against that buried bitterness. He said, don't let that get you. So what about an example to avoid? Lest there be any fornicator or profane person as Esau, who for one morsel of meat sold his birthright. For ye know how that afterward, when he would have inherited the blessing, he was rejected, for he found no place of repentance, though he sought it carefully with tears. This is a pretty short conclusion after such kind of some wordy parts of the passage. But the writer cites Jacob's brother Esau as a prime example and referring to sexual immorality and godlessness. He urged the faltering Jewish Christian convert audience to realize exactly how valuable God's promises are, and that they should not be like Esau, who exchanged some momentary gain for God's promises for his place in God's blessing. And the writer's noting the irreversible consequences of Esau's foolish choice to sell his birthright for a single meal. And Esau greatly regretted his choice, but he couldn't reverse the deal he'd struck, no matter how sorry he was about what he'd done in retrospect. And that foolish decision by Esau serves as a solemn warning to believers to value and appreciate the spiritual blessings and the inheritance purchased for us in them by Jesus. Because by God's strength and guidance, we can run our race toward holiness with endurance, knowing that the benefit of our eternal reward in the spiritual sense far outweighs any temporary trials that we may face. All right, I think I found a different squirrel. Have I used that one before, Scott?
I don't think so.
New squirrel.
I definitely don't remember the green background.
Yeah, I didn't either. I was excited. Okay, so takeaways. We have to endure trials, and we got to look to the example of Jesus, and we have to accept God's discipline in order to grow in holiness. The Old Testament heroes persisted in faith while awaiting Jesus' coming, and we need to do the same that second time around. Nothing in this world is worth tearing our fixed gaze from Jesus, because remember, he's standing there on the finish line. That's our goal. And our perspective on life is always better if we take them in perspective and remember to compare the piddling stuff that we're going through compared to Jesus' sufferings. And if we're a faith-filled disciple, we submit to the loving Father's discipline. And holiness isn't optional for believers. Believers should cooperate with God's discipline to root out sin. And of course, and the bottom line is we should never sacrifice the eternal reward that we're promised for any temporary pleasure. It's just not worth it. No matter how tempting, it's not worth it. Okay, what all on this? If I flap my gums long enough.
That was pretty good.
Rick, do you have anything to add? You're sitting there looking real thoughtful.
No, not right now.
Not right now. That says ominous. All right, well, thank you.